It's Mary, the mom, at A Girl, a Book, and a Mom. And today I'm doing my March reading roundup with a delicious glass of Aldi's Tempranillo, one of my favorite wines from the grapes of Spain and Portugal. Although it's Aldi, so I'm not sure where it was point of origin. Anyway, let's talk about March. 13 books were read in March. I had 8 5-stars, 3 4-stars, and 2 3-stars, which comes to an average of 4.23. So I'd say it was an excellent reading month. I'm trying out some new equipment, which it says it's level, or it did before I sat down. And I am an old woman, so not getting back up to check. Anyway, let's get into the books, shall we? The first book I read was White Fang by Jack London. I read this on the Kindle. It was an e-library book. And I read this one for middle grade March. And it's my adventure prompt. Although really, honestly, I'm not reading a middle grade March book unless it's an adventure book. Anyway, this also covers the Booklist Queens category of a childhood favorite. I vividly remember reading the Jack London books with my brother, the good twin. Anyway, Bill, I'm okay. Next book I read, that one I gave 5 stars, even though Jack London was really not the greatest of people. His book about a wolf dog who didn't know kindness was really, really good. And it was all from the dog's point of view and gave a lot of a lot of insight into how dogs maybe think. So yeah, one of my favorite books. Well, it's right up there with Call of the Wild. But I read White Fang. It was excellent, as to be expected. The next book I read was The Weekend by Charlotte Wood. This is the book about 3 friends who are wildly different and come together to clear out the 4th friend's beach house after she dies. And it's all about friendship, and it's excellent. It is really, really, really good. The beginning is a little bit slow moving. But these are women, I want to say in their 70s, who are looking back on their lives and having to reinterpret their positions in the friend group. And it's super good. I gave it 4 stars. This book covers my buzzword readathon for March, which is the word time. So the weekend is a unit of time. Also, I heard about this book on Simon of Savage Reads channel. And it covers the Booklist Queens prompt, a book about friendships. It was really good. I gave it 4 stars. Super good. Slow in the beginning. The next book I read was Read at the Bone by Jacqueline Woodson. This was another Kindle e-library book. I was looking for a book about Black joy because I've had a lot of my woke books have been really deep and hard to read. So my sister Gretel, suggested this one. This has some beautifully written characters, and it's about a teenage girl and boy from wildly different socioeconomic classes, and they fall in love as only young teenagers can. And a pregnancy ensues, and they have to figure out how to go forward. This book is all about love, which works out for some of them and not so great for others. Yeah, beautifully written characters. I give it 5 stars. In case you're wondering, I have notes because this way I can stay on target. Otherwise, this is going to be a 4-hour long video where I'm like, I just got my hair cut. There's a butt ton of product in here, and I have no volume. And I'm going to get a peignoir set and pretend I'm Blanche Devereaux. Either that or I'm going to go into a Starbucks and start screaming that my coffee isn't right. Like we have a Starbucks in this county. Anyway, back to the book list. The next book I read, which I talked about a little bit in my reading vlog, was The Carpet People by Terry Pratchett, which is about all kinds of people and animals that live in the carpet, and it's from their perspective, and it's a very fun, silly book. It's Terry Pratchett's first book, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4-star. Some of it was a little goofy, we'll call it, and some of it I was like, wait, what? So it was good though, and I enjoyed it. It was a physical book, and one of my really good friends was having a reading slump, so I handed it off to her. And this covers the book list queen prompt of a debut novel by a famous author. So that was fun. It was a real quick read, super fun. The next book I read, the Terry Pratchett Carpet People book, covers the middle grades March prompt of published in the year I was born, 1972, and I will link that video somewhere. You'll figure it out, wherever the little thing shows up. The next book I read was The Mysterious Benedict Society by Trenton Lee Stewart. And if you'll notice, there's some silhouettes on the cover, which covers that prompt. There's also a seriously deep family element to this, as in a found family, because all the children are orphans. So this is a great little mystery and intrigue book. It's the first in a series. I have the rest of them right here, so kind of excited to read them. The girl has gotten to page 9 and has decided it's not exciting enough yet. So there you go. By page 9, it's not exciting. But it does get exciting, and there were some seriously nobody. It's just pasted to my head. Okay, squirrel. So lots of intrigue, some big surprises. I really enjoyed this. Yes, 5 stars. Okay, moving right along. Dug-a-dum. Sorry. Muppet reference. Comes The Deep by River Solomon. And this is one that, yep, there it is. Let's see if I can get that in there. It's a book club selection. Are you going to focus for me? Focus. Maybe not. Anyway, it's a book club favorite. It's really a beautiful book. It's deep. It's dark. I found it a little confusing, but by the end I totally understood. There's sort of an LGBTQ plus romance in here. Sort of. And sort of it's a novel about the pregnant slaves that were thrown off slave ships becoming mer people. Well, I guess if they're pregnant, they're women, so they'd be mermaids. But their babies would be born into the water and would be mer people. Mer people. But it was a little confusing. But I did enjoy this. I gave it a 4. I said, yeah, dark and beautifully written. A little confusing, but by the end I understood it. This covers the book list queen prompt of a book club favorite. So, on to book number 7. And that was You'll Never Believe What Happened to Lacey by Amber Ruffin. And this was a Kindle e-library book that had the words "an indie next pick" next to it. So I'm counting it as the book list queen's indie publisher. Amber Ruffin is a comedy writer. I believe she used to write for Comedy Central. Anyway, you can find her videos on YouTube if you don't have cable like I don't, which is how I read so much. I'm not a giant fan of her comedy, and I actually hadn't looked it up before reading this book, and this book is supposed to be hilarious, but honestly, I didn't find it hilarious. I found it really sad, and in some cases, like, really, like, ugh. Like, yeah, I don't want to say any of them because I don't want to give it away. But there's some run-of-the-mill racism, some microaggressions at work, and then there's some really just not cool stuff. But yeah, it just made me sad. I did not find this to be a hilarious book. So I only gave it 3 stars. But I also got the distinct feeling that I might not be the intended audience. So my sister found it terrific. Yeah. Just my opinion. If you love it, great. Okay. Being that we're over halfway through, I'm going to have a sip of my Aldi wine. Delish. Okay, the next book I read is Where the Mountain Meets the Moon by Grace Lind. And it's the story about a little girl who wants to change her family's fortune. And for some reason, goldfish play an important role in this. But also, it's a wonderful story that's told with a bunch of, let me see if I can find one. It's told with a bunch of, and now I'm not going to find one, with a bunch of like other stories in the middle of it, like little folklore stories, and just captivating, magical. So this covers middle grade March fairy tale element. It's based on Chinese folklore. It was a lovely book to read to the girl, and it's full of stories, and it's a fantasy book. And at the back of the book, there are, like, that's the author, and these are some of the, where she got the stories. So, just very, very enjoyable. I also have the rest of this series right here, so I'm sure we'll be reading those. Okay. The girl also, by the way, says that's great. We're still trying to get her on film. I only have her so often. Okay, book number 9 is my woke book of the month. It's called Stamped from the Beginning, The Definitive History of Racist Ideas in America by Ibram X. Kendi. And I read this on Audible audiobook for my 10,000 hours of commuting back and forth to work. This was a New York Times nonfiction bestseller, and so it covers that prompt on the Bookless Queens Reading Challenge. I really, really enjoyed this book, by the way. It's written like a history book that starts at the beginning, at like the very beginning with like Aristotle, because I've always been like, now certainly slavery had to have existed in Plymouth Rock and stuff like that, and I was kind of like, well, trying to grapple with it, and it was really good. It gave a really interesting overview, and it was kind of cool because in some spots they talked about Portugal, how that became the first center of slave trading, and now there is a museum there about the slave trade, which was totally cool. 2 years ago, before this pandemic, 2 years ago I went and visited, and it was really beautifully done and moving. And if you ever go to Lisbon, Portugal, I suggest strongly going to this slave history museum. If I can figure out how, maybe I'll put some pictures in here. I gotta find them. I have no idea where they are. So that was really interesting that I could connect that to what I'd learned outside of the book. But as I went through, I discovered that a lot of history wasn't how I learned it in school, that it was almost like any any advancements in freeing of the slaves really had nothing to do with freeing the slaves because they're people, but more a strategic thing. And it was interesting how the Republican Party was the party that was freeing the slaves, although they were very careful not to be pro-black. They were just freeing slaves. But then that it switched over to the Democratic Party being the party more concerned with human rights. So that was a very interesting sort of thing to learn about. I was a little horrified to discover that causes that I supported in my youth were not what I thought they were, that they were more, they had an undercurrent of racism to them, that there were so many things that I remember as a child and had no idea that they were racially motivated, like the war on drugs, that before Reagan, nobody paid attention to drugs. So that was a disappointing moment for myself, that I had to kind of reconcile my youth. So that was a little difficult. So I kind of slowed down not in the speed at which I commute to back and forth to work. No speeding tickets this year so far. Growth mindset yet. But I slowed down the amount of information I was taking so I could think more. Like, I would listen only one way, and then the way home I would listen to Pink Martini and ponder. So big, heavy, deep, excellent book. I bought a copy and sent it to my stepdad because he's a big reader of history, and last I heard, he was enjoying it. Okay, so that was a 5-star book. The next book, one of my favorites, it's called Lamb, the Gospel According to Biff, or Levi. Biff is a nickname. Christ's childhood pal. And I love this book. This book covers the Bookless Queen's reread a favorite book. And I believe when I talked about it during my weekend reading vlog, I talked about it as being blasphemous, but it's not really blasphemous because it's like fictional stories that give maybe an idea of what happened during that big space in the Bible where we know nothing about Jesus, where before he turns 33 and begins his ministry, where he begins his ministry. And so it talks about Jesus dealing with the fact that he can't know a woman. So, of course, Biff then has to know the women and explain it to Jesus, which is hilarious. And it's silly, like they're in China searching for the 3 wise men, and so they end up eating Chinese food on Jesus's birthday, like many of his descendants. So, I mean, there's a good, healthy chunk of silliness, and I mean, it wouldn't be Christopher Moore if there wasn't. I love this author. He's even funny on Twitter. But it's an excellent book to read during the Easter/Lenten season because it really highlights the human side of Jesus without being at all preachy. It's I love this book. It's, of course, a 5-star. Okay. Next is Night by Elie Wiesel. I listened to this also as an audiobook. And, yes. So there I was, speeding to work in the morning, maybe going somewhere between 70 and 75, or possibly going the speed limit and being completely respectful of all traffic laws, sobbing. Because it was, oh my gosh, it was heartbreaking. It was beautifully written. It's the true story of Elie Wiesel's life right before he got shipped to a concentration camp with his family, and what happened at the concentration camp, and like his faith and human spirit. And it's a short book. It's wonderfully written, and the audiobook has it included his Nobel Prize acceptance speech, which I thought was phenomenal. And this book was actually recommended to me by about 4 of my students, and as more students saw that I had it written on my board to read, and I teach math, more students would come forth and be like, oh my gosh, you have to read this book. Okay, so the next book I read was Chilling Effect by Valerie Valdes. And this was a Kindle e-library book. And I heard about this book from Jeannie on Jeannie's Bookish Thoughts. Hi, Jeannie. And apparently, well, not apparently, this book is a space opera. Now, I don't usually read these, but I gotta admit, the idea of psychic cats kind of intrigued me. And then the more I looked at it, there were like alien brain parasites and a sort of organized crime syndicate called The Fridge, which cryogenically froze people they kidnapped. So it was silly and fun, and I would have enjoyed it much more if I understood the Cuban vernacular instead of texting my sister and said, what does arroz con mango mean? Because I'm pretty sure they don't mean rice with mangoes. It doesn't. It means something I'm not going to say. And yeah, so there were a lot of phrases that I had no idea, or I'd be like, okay, this cannot mean this. And so then I had to wait until she was available to say, well, I think that means this. And yes, so there you go. I gave that one 3 stars because I don't speak Spanish, and when you use slang, it's very, very difficult for people who don't speak the language to understand like a solid chunk of the book. But I gave it 3 stars because if I did understand the slang, I would have really enjoyed it. And there is a second book in the series, which I'm contemplating whether or not I want to look at. Okay, the final book is Kirstin Hanna's The Four Winds, which I know everybody's been talking about it. It's about the Dust Bowl and a woman and her children going west to California. And yeah, so I know everybody's been talking about this, but the Busy Ladies Book Club, which my sister and my mom are in, and it's a bunch of us on Zoom, this is our book of April, and I tried to get it as a library book, but there was a 6-month wait, and I was like, oh, hell no. So, hello, Target, and your stickers that never come off. Hate those. So I got it, and my sister's here for Easter, so I will be passing it off to her and possibly my mom. It's going to be a quick handoff because I don't think anybody can get this out of the library right now. But it was really, really good, and there's a strong underlying theme of mother-daughter relationships. And I thought it was a fast read, but it could be that I was just glued to it. And yes, there was lots of ugly crying in the end, and my big old pit bull was just sitting on my lap, and it wasn't pretty, but excellent book. Anyway, those are the books that I read this month. Of course, I did have spring break in the middle, and I have a big case of senioritis. And, I have about 3 weeks left of graduate school, so I may be ostriching myself hiding in books. Because, yeah, having a master's in applied statistics is scary. But, you know, I mean, it's going to happen. And good Lord, I got to keep up with my homework or I'm tripping at the finish line. Anyway, why don't you let me know what you're reading right now? Do you enjoy a Tempranillo? Yummy. And what kind of product do I need to do to get some body in this hair? Yeesh. All right. Hope you're having a great day. Be safe. Make good decisions. Get vaccinated. I got my 2 shots. Happy reading.